Okay, so this could be the start of a series where I go through my backlog of games and essentially review them, offering insight into the game and, my own personal opinion. I think it could be an entertaining series, so we'll see what happens, but for now, I hope you guys enjoy the video.
Okay, it's game time.
Resident Evil 4.
Resident Evil 4 is a game that I had put off playing for years, but come 2020, what with the pandemic and lockdown, I'd finally gotten around to playing it, and I just have to say, wow. This game was not only hailed as one of the best Resident Evil games, not only one of the best survival horror games, but also as one of the best games of all time. And I've got to say, yeah, I agree. Now, just for a bit of history, Resident Evil 4 was in development for a long time, with multiple versions of the game being started and eventually scrapped. The first version of the game was such a departure from what Resident Evil was, that instead of scrapping it, it was turned into Devil May Cry. You can still find gameplay online of some of the earlier versions where the environments are totally different and fixed camera angles are still a thing. Of course, the final version of the game, however, opted for a third-person perspective, and this game is responsible for popularising that sort of gameplay because of how well it did it. Despite switching up the formula, opting for more action-orientated gameplay, the game still felt like a Resident Evil game, with returning characters and still retaining horror elements. In regards to the narrative, the game follows Leon Kennedy, who fans should remember from Resident Evil 2. The rookie police officer is now a full-blown government agent, quite the promotion if I do say so myself. Now he is tasked with saving the president's daughter, Ashley, who was kidnapped by a creepy cult who inject people with a virus that turns people into violent, murderous beings. The game strikes a good balance between absurd and grounded, and always shakes things up before it starts to feel stale or repetitive. The plot always feels like it's moving forward, and you never feel like you're not making any progress. The main antagonist is Lord Sadler, who is this very serious villain who controls the minds of the cult, but it is Salazar for me that shines through. He's this weird little lunatic dressed like a pirate. It is so bizarre, but it doesn't feel out of place.
Hunnigan, what happened? The transmission got cut off. Salazar, how'd you...
We've jacked the line.
Now I played the HD remaster of the game on the PlayStation 4, so I'm judging the graphics there, and they're great. Looking back at the old GameCube graphics, they also hold up tremendously well though. I can imagine back in 2005 this was groundbreaking to see visually. The voice acting is pretty good too, although there are points where I can't tell if it's the voice acting that's bad or the dialogue itself.
I've been expecting you, my brethrens.
No thanks, bro.
I have to commend the incredible pacing in this game. It's so easy to play for hours and hours. I honestly didn't want to put the controller down despite needing a breather because of how intense things can get. Your first playthrough will take you around 12 to 15 hours, and during that time you will face off against zombie-like villagers, a giant mutated salamander, infiltrate a castle infested with mace-wielding and crossbow-firing cultists, before engaging a whole militia. The fact that this all works is crazy to me. Each section is memorable and vastly different to one another in regards to tone and environments. On paper, this game shouldn't really work, but it is executed so damn well. The gameplay loop is pretty ordinary. You progress, kill waves of enemies, progress, solve a puzzle or two, kill waves of enemies, find an item to progress, kill a cool boss, progress, and rinse and repeat. It sounds repetitive, but it's far from that. The reason being that the game is so brilliantly designed, perhaps one of the best designed games I've ever played. Environments are fantastic, they're open and encourage exploration, but are also straightforward and understandable at the same time. Exploring rewards you with ammo or grenades you can use, as well as points to spend on upgrades and new weapons. On the normal difficulty, which is what I played on, the game provides the perfect amount of challenge. It's not too easy, but not too hard. You can't waste all your ammo on enemies, you should still conserve it here and there. After all, this is still a survival horror game. There were moments where I didn't have enough ammo to shoot my way through, so I did what humans do best: improvise. I would stagger one with a well-placed headshot to then deliver a sweet roundhouse kick that knocked over a group of enemies, where I could then proceed to knife them on the ground until they died. It was actually quite efficient. This is just one of the methods you can use to take enemies out. Maybe you want to shoot one in the leg to drop him to the floor and buy you some time to reposition. Or perhaps you will time a shot just right and shoot a piece of dynamite just as it leaves the enemy's hands, causing an explosion that wipes out a whole group of enemies. The combat feels so fun because of this, and it never gets old. There are also a few quick time events, but they're used sparingly and effectively. Rather than replacing whole segments that could be gameplay, they're used to essentially keep you on your toes. The controls by today's standard are not amazing, but they work. Yeah, they can feel a little clunky at times, but they feel deliberate. Now the reason they don't feel dated is because the rest of the game benefits off these controls. Controls which feel like they were meticulously crafted to make for a much more intense experience. You see, enemy encounters are that much more intense because of this. You can't run and gun in Resident Evil 4. When you want to aim, you have to stand still. And with this being a more action heavy game, meaning you're constantly being attacked, it adds pressure. Whether it's making sure you land your shots, not getting hit when you're already low on health, or making sure the enemies don't kill Ashley, you feel that pressure in every enemy encounter. I think this is why the game works so well. The controls might seem dated at first, but once you're playing, you realise the game is all the better because of them. For me, this is where the horror comes from. When you're standing still to aim, you still feel vulnerable, even though you have a weapon in your hand. When hordes of enemies are coming at you from different directions, you have to think quickly. What's the best way to pick them off? The sound in the game also adds to this, because when you hear the cult members whispering, it's so creepy. You would hear them before you see them, and that makes things 10 times scarier. I remember the first time the man with the chainsaw came running at me. I fired my shotgun and he went down, and I thought that was it. Started killing off all the other enemies, and then I hear the chainsaw going again, and I kind of just screamed and I died. Realizing that he's harder to put down than other enemies and is capable of killing you with one blow very easily, it makes those moments where you hear a chainsaw in the distance later in the game panic-inducing. The first time the regenerator appeared, knowing I didn't have the thermal scope needed to shoot its vital organs, the panic again kicked in. Even once you do obtain the scope, you feel that pressure as you have to hit all of its organs before it closes the gap and kills you. The music also adds a fantastic sense of atmosphere. It's dark and melancholic and genuinely immerses you into this world. The music, sound design, gameplay, environments, everything just perfectly comes together to create these intense scenarios, which is where the horror comes from. Years ago, I wrote a piece on what makes horror games so scary, and in that I summarised by saying that a great horror game should keep you on edge throughout. It should maintain a sense of suspense and uneasiness through unpredictability and unfamiliarity. For me, Resident Evil 4 does that just as well as any other conventional horror game, despite making you feel like Rambo at times. Honestly, whenever I heard this was one of the best games of all time, I would look at it and just fail to understand why. After finally playing it, I get it. This game reinvented the survival horror genre, and the influence it had on games going forward cannot be understated. Games such as Dead Space, Bioshock, and Gears of War took heavy inspiration from Resident Evil 4, and that's just to name a few. This game played such an important role in shaping the very nature of video games, and you just have to applaud Shinji Mikami and Capcom for what they did. I really enjoyed Resident Evil 4. I don't know if it's my favourite of the series because I absolutely loved the Resident Evil 2 remake, but it's definitely up there. I know there is a remake coming, and whilst I don't think it's necessary, I won't say no to it either. I hope that it's able to shake things up just enough whilst also retaining what made this game so great in the first place.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?